Good evening, everyone. I'm Valerie Milburn, and I'm a volunteer with NAMI Central Texas. Welcome to the 2020 annual meeting of NAMI Central Texas. We're delighted you've joined us this evening. We have a program that will inform and inspire you. My 7 years of volunteer work with NAMI Central Texas has inspired me in many ways. I've been able to share my mental health journey through my teaching and speaking with NAMI. This has allowed me to be part of the fight to break down the stigma that surrounds mental health conditions. I live in active recovery with bipolar disorder, anxiety disorder, post-traumatic stress disorder, and substance use disorder. I didn't say that publicly for many years. Now, through NAMI, I've been able to share my story of struggle, hope, and recovery with all sorts of audiences. I've presented to law enforcement, medical students, middle and high school students, business leaders, and 911 dispatchers, to name a few. That's a lot of stigma busting. I also teach and present workshops to peers, and I am a NAMI state trainer. I have the privilege of leading and connecting other volunteers so that they too can have the opportunity to heal, they too can have the opportunity to heal through helping. I survived a battle with a severe mental health crisis. I was first diagnosed with depression in the 7th grade, but I didn't get the correct diagnosis of bipolar disorder or the proper treatment until my complete breakdown and crisis 20 years later. My crisis took my career and I couldn't work for a year and a half. I had 7 psychiatric hospitalizations in 18 months, and I found myself in a place of despair and darkness where I didn't want to live. I would go for days in bed, barely eating, not showering. I was unable to mother my children in the loving and beautiful way I had before I got sick. I lived in a sober house for 6 months, leaving 2 young children at home, fortunately with their father, my cheerleader of 37 years. My illness took my family to financial devastation, and it took us 10 years to climb out of debt. I fought my way back to stability and the beginning of my recovery journey after 5 long years. I mentioned earlier that I live in active recovery. That means that I work every day to stay mentally, emotionally, physically, spiritually healthy. I have a wellness plan that includes exercise, mindfulness, medication, therapy, healthy eating, except for sugar. One of the reasons I share my story is so that we can talk about mental health the same way we talk about physical health. We talk about cancer, we talk about diabetes, and we treat those things. NAMI Central Texas is changing the conversation so that we can talk about mental health. I get to be part of that conversation through my volunteer work with NAMI. I get to have my dark past become a shining light of hope for others. NAMI's programs share hope and information and resources with many people. The family programs like Families Together and the new Lighthouse program offer support to those with a loved one living with a mental health condition. The new Stories and Strategies workshop and other peer programs offer inspiration and skills to adults living with the mental health condition. NAMI's support groups for both family members and peers offer a vital connection to those with a common bond. These support groups and all NAMI's programs are even more vital now in the isolating time of the pandemic. NAMI pivoted their programs from in-person to online super fast, very early in the pandemic. Kudos to Karen and the amazing staff for this accomplishment. These wonderful NAMI programs provide many benefits, but the one thing they all have in common is the discovery that we are not alone living with a mental health condition. When I present the NAMI Ending the Silence program to middle schoolers and high schoolers, I ask them to raise their hand if they know someone living with anxiety, depression, or bipolar disorder. Every time, at least 75% and sometimes 100% of the hands in that room go up. As the students look around and see all those hands raised, it's a powerful moment. They realize they are not alone. We are not alone. Now I'm so pleased to introduce Dr. Quivera Moten, the new Deputy Executive Director, oversees NAMI's programs and staff. She is the newest addition to the NAMI's staff team. Welcome, Dr. Moten.
Thank you, Valerie. Hello, my name is Dr. Quivera Moten. I'm the new Deputy Executive Director of NAMI Central Texas. I first met NAMI 11 years ago when I was searching for hope for my mother, who was deeply challenged by her mental health condition. After speaking with a NAMI volunteer and attending a family-to-family class, I finally found hope for my mother and for myself. I became a family-to-family teacher, a presenter of sharing hope, and even served on the board of directors. And now I am so honored to be back at NAMI as a staff person. Since my first encounter with NAMI, I have seen how volunteers are NAMI's irreplaceable lifeblood. Whether it's someone working in the office to ensure class materials are ready, or support group facilitators, teachers, or presenters carrying out our programs, volunteers offer their unique experiences and wisdom to the community's immeasurable benefit. Their efforts have meant this organization could grow to serve more people and adapt to the changing needs of our community, including a pandemic. Our volunteers are working both in person and online to make NAMI Central Texas the organization we are here to celebrate today. I want to introduce you to three of these generous people. Helen, Thomas, and Caitlin will share in their own words what volunteering has meant to them and why it matters to our community. Let's watch.
I think it took almost 12 years after I had received a diagnosis to actually participate in a group support to be open about my diagnosis and my um, mental health condition.
I myself, as my mental health journey started around when I was in middle school, I didn't have anyone to really talk to about it because I didn't understand what was going on. I just knew that I was feeling a certain way and it was impacting my daily life, but I didn't really understand what I was going through was considered a mental health concern. And obviously, my peers didn't really understand either. And so, when you don't have people around you who really can understand what you're going through or what's going on, it can be very isolating.
I have been involved with NAMI for 6 years. I spent 40 years in the past, of the 40 years in New York City, and moved back to Austin 6 years ago, where I was born and raised. And I was concerned. I've been doing very well, and I was concerned about how I was going to, maintain and work on my recovery outside my familiar New York City, environs.
But I didn't start participating in NAMI support groups probably until a little over a year ago. And I knew that I wanted to be a facilitator even before that time. So I went through the training and have been facilitating with NAMIs since February of 2020.
The real kicker, the real surprise for me has been this volunteer work in my new life in Austin, because for the first time, I've been able to find value in my own long, ugly story, because it's a long one, and it allows me to help reduce stigma, and it allows me to sort of pull beauty from the darkness, and to give people hope.
Working with NAMI has given me an outlet of healing. So by saying my own story out loud is very empowering, because not only am I owning it, not only am I owning my own story for other people to hear, but deep down, I also know that my words and my story can have impact on someone else who might be going through a similar situation. And that for me is one of the most empowering and wholesome things that I can feel, is knowing that my words mean something to someone, even if it's just one person. If I can give them an ounce of hope.
And for me, it's been so important because, just the lack of socialization each week. I'm working from home, and so the time that I usually would spend with my coworkers in the office, or hanging out with friends, those are very limited now. But having this support group online once a week has been, um, something to look forward to, and knowing that there's going to be a community here that I can go to and give my attention and the type of care that I would like to give.
With the COVID cutting off so many of these activities, we were very eager and ambitious to convert them, to the virtual. And the good news about it is I did a great deal of this with my friend Valerie, and we both like to be busy. And it was a tremendous amount of work, actually, to take things that had been, say, a class that lasted for 8 weeks and was 2 hours per episode, to converting that and condensing it into 4 1-hour episodes. And it again, to have to pare away at all these things that we thought were very valuable and get to the very, the very nut, the very gist of what we thought we could convey to people, especially at this time.
So one of the things that I feel like a program like Ending the Silence is essential in doing is giving youth the opportunity to have someone like the speakers that present in these programs, having an adult presenter and a youth presenter, to really shed light on these different experiences of what really mental health is, so they can feel less alone, because someone in that audience might be going through something, or they might know someone that's going through something, and they might feel alone or unsure on how to approach these different situations.
It's been a growing and learning process from the beginning. I think there was some uncertainty of how people would participate in the logistics of hosting these meetings, as well as the frequency, since we used to have a north and south location, and now everybody was kind of fusing into one. But from what I've seen, it's actually been a great asset to have this online resource for people to connect with. I think we're getting people in areas, in the greater areas of Austin and Central Texas, that we wouldn't have normally been able to reach in person.
So working with NAMI, I will say, has really pushed me out of my shell, but in the best way possible. So I am actually super introverted. I'm really shy. I tend to not like to talk about myself, and working with NAMI has pushed me in the best way possible, where I'm starting to own my voice and own myself and use my story to make impact. And I believe that being a part of the volunteering programs such as Ending the Silence, our parents and teachers as allies, allows not only the people who the audience to really gain something from it, but the presenters gain something from it as well. Like I as a presenter, each time I present, am healing.
Yeah, I just want to thank Nami for this opportunity, for creating the space for facilitators like myself to give and to listen. And I think that um, Nami has just been amazing in adapting. But it's something that I think anybody who has a mental health condition is very resilient and is going to adapt. But what I've been able to observe in how this program has adapted since COVID and built, and it's only becoming stronger. I think that um, the organization itself never wants to settle and is always looking for a way to improve the program, and I think that's amazing. I just want to applaud Nami for that.
Helen, Thomas, and Caitlin, thank you for all you do to bring so much hope and light to our community. We are so fortunate to have you as volunteers. Hello, I'm Karen Reynes, and I'm the Executive Director of NAMI Central Texas. And if you had told me 10 years ago that a free 12-week class on mental illness led by volunteers would change my life, I'm not sure I would have believed you. I am here today, though, and I am passionate about the work and mission of NAMI Central Texas because, like so many of you, in a time when I felt most alone, NAMI was there, providing a safe space and a welcoming place where I was assured that I was most definitely not alone. I still vividly and fondly remember my family to family class in 2011. I have always been incredibly grateful for the two volunteers who led that class, Adrienne Kennedy and Norma Garcia Bangs. Two women, just like me, moms who were navigating serious mental illness with their adult children. All of our volunteers who so beautifully shared their stories and their experiences as they lead classes, facilitate support groups, provide community presentations, and lead our advocacy efforts, all of them. They are what sets apart our mental health programming in this community. As we face the uncertainty of a current pandemic and the heartbreaking impact of racism and the stress of a really highly polarized political climate, our community needs NAMI Central Texas mental health programming now more than ever. A recent CDC study showed that almost 41% of respondents reported experiencing adverse mental health conditions. One study found the prevalence of anxiety and depression symptoms were substantially higher than they had been reported in 2019. And people with pre-existing clinically diagnosed psychiatric disorders reported an even higher prevalence of symptoms. Even before the onset of this challenging time, we were already trying to address and change a flawed system of care, limited community mental health resources, and pervasive stigma and shame. We know the real wave of need is still coming in 2021, and knowing that could be overwhelming, but we get to choose. We can either let these staggering statistics overwhelm us or embolden us. NAMI Central Texas has chosen to be emboldened, recognizing we are not alone in this work. Together, we are moving forward. Thanks to a wonderful staff and an amazing and dedicated team of volunteers, as been mentioned several times already, we moved quickly to virtual programming in March and have been able to continue to provide classes, support groups, presentations, and resources that our community has always counted on. While we were nervous about making the shift to the virtual world, we actually soon discovered that there were a lot of silver linings. We were able to meet the needs of our community with new and creative programming, some of it developed by our own volunteers, Helen and Valerie. We saw participation in our programming grow, and we saw an increase in the numbers of people participating from surrounding counties. But most importantly, we heard from people like you who told us how grateful you were that we were online. And even in the midst of this pandemic, we were actually able to launch brand new initiatives, one which we're so proud of, to address some of our growing concerns about the mental health impact on our children and our teens. With support from Impact Austin, we launched Lighthouse, which connects parents and caregivers to our parent support and resource navigator, who can offer valuable support and resource information needed when people are navigating mental health challenges. And because we understand the value of maximizing our capacity, we recently launched partnerships with the Samaritan Center and Seek Institute to provide clinician-led programming to address some of the gaps in our services. These new initiatives and innovative programming will continue in this next year. And I'm also excited to share some new developments as we move forward. Thanks to funding from St. David's Foundation, we are actually adding our first peer program coordinator, a full-time staff member who will help us in assessing and ensuring we are meeting the unique education and support needs of individuals living with mental illness in our community. We hope to have this new position filled in December and look forward to expanding our staff to address this important need. Additionally, we've been expanding our outreach in the business and corporate arena by providing workplace training and helping transform the mental health culture of workplaces in the Central Texas area. In 2020, we have been able to utilize this programming as a source of revenue for the organization, and we've developed a business plan and a strategy for expanding this programming in 2021. We envision a workplace training as a sustainable source of revenue to support our no-cost programming. And with grant funding from NAMI and St. David's Foundation, NAMI Central Texas is investing in training to intensify our commitment to diversity, equity, and inclusion, not just within our internal community, but also in our engagement with the communities we serve and our volunteers. We recognize that there are barriers keeping many communities from benefiting from and engaging with our organization, and we are committed to listening, learning, and transforming to address these gaps. Lastly, but most importantly, our program staff has developed a calendar of engagement and support opportunities to ensure the lifeblood of our organization, our volunteers, continues to feel supported and connected as we address the growing needs of our community. Now, when the pandemic shut down our community in March, we had a lot of concerns about the potential economic impact on our organization. However, we are incredibly fortunate to have a thoughtful and strategic board of directors and a finance committee who have ensured our organization has the financial reserves and policies in place to support our long-term sustainability. Additionally, we made a concerted effort to lower our operating costs substantially this year. We moved quickly to apply for grant funding, which led to a 220% increase in grant funding compared to last year. We also made adjustments to our annual walk, moving to a virtual event, and we were able to surpass our $250,000 goal by almost $20,000. And thanks to so many of you who support our mission at all levels, we've experienced a 20% increase in donations. Now we're in a really good place as we look to 2021, but we're not out of the woods, not yet. 2021 will be a new year of challenge, but we stand ready to meet the challenges together. Thanks to your support and the commitment of our staff, board of directors, and amazing volunteers, we are ready to face 2021. We are most definitely not alone. We are moving together in 2021. Thank you for being a part of this important work. We couldn't do it without you.
Good evening. My name is Leo Patera, and I serve as president of the board of directors. I value my role with the board since joining it 3 years ago because it has raised my personal awareness of the number of families and individuals impacted by mental illness and the realization that we are not alone. We continue to make significant progress to support the stigma of mental illness, and I am proud to be part of an organization that is a recognized leader in advocating for mental health for all. It is the responsibility of the board of directors to guide this organization as we work to fulfill our mission and improving the lives of all individuals affected by mental illness through education, support, and advocacy programs. It is my honor tonight to introduce the slate of new board members that the NAMI Central Texas membership has unanimously selected for this next term. The first is Dr. George Almeida. In our initial Zoom meeting with Dr. Almeida, he humbly said, "Please call me George." So George is an associate professor in the Department of Psychiatry and Behavioral Science at Dell Medical Center and director of the Bipolar Disorder Center at UT Health Center. Next is Courtney Bailey. Courtney is the Director of Issues and Engagement at Leadership Austin, where she works to bring diverse people together in a meaningful and inclusive ways to address civic issues impacting the greater Austin region. Next is Michael Cox. Michael is a level 2 certified restoration therapist in private practice. He is also a national trainer in mental health first aid for the National Council for Behavioral Health and has a master's degree in counseling. Next is Brianna McKinney. Brianna is the founder and president of Bloom Communications, an integrated communication agency bridging the gap between the marketing, market research, and public relation disciplines. And now I'll introduce our second term candidates. Paul Truckle. Paul has more than 40 years of leadership experience in mission-driven organization and recently retired as president and CEO of Amplify Credit Union. And finally, I am entering my second term. I am currently the Director of Accounting and Financial Reporting for the Texas Workforce Commission. This slate of board members brings leadership, diversity, and a wide base of knowledge to the organization, and we are thrilled to welcome them to the board of directors. To see their biographies for our board candidates, please visit our website, and the link will be mailed to you shortly after this meeting. Now, I'd like to recognize an outgoing board member, Adrienne Kennedy. Adrienne has been a dedicated leader of our organization for over 14 years. She started when we were NAMI Austin and has actively contributed to the growth of the organization and it ultimately becoming NAMI Central Texas. In addition to serving on the NAMI Central Texas board this past year, she was also the board president of NAMI National Organization. Some of Adrienne's contributions to NAMI Central Texas include served as the first advocacy chair, served as board president, served as a trainer in NAMI's signature programs, including Family to Family, Family Support Group, Parents and Teachers as Allies, and Basics and Providers. Adrian's deep commitment to mental health resources and justice reform has been transformative to this organization and our community. We are so grateful to Adrian for her service to NAMI Central Texas and our community. And Adrian, please note, we are saying thank you, but not farewell. We look forward to your continued involvement with NAMI Central Texas and your sage advice and guidance. I would like now to recognize and thank everybody who had participated in NAMI Walks this year. We are so grateful to the community for stepping up, as Karen said, to raise more than $260,000, close to $270,000, to support the programming you've heard about today. Let's take a look at the creative ways our team celebrated NAMI Walks this year.
We'd like to special thanks to Ascension Seton for generously supporting tonight's event. And now it's my pleasure to introduce Anne Grady. Anne is one of my favorite speakers. Anne is an international speaker, a best-selling author, a two-time TEDx speaker, a former honorary walk chair for NAMI, and a longtime friend of NAMI Central Texas. Anne has generously joined us tonight and will share some thoughts on harnessing the power of resilience. Welcome, Anne.
Hello, everybody. Let me share my screen. There we go. So Thank you so much for having me, everyone. I became involved with NAMI 13 years ago when my son Evan was 4 years old. And it has certainly been a journey. And NAMI has been with me every step of the way. So we're going to change things up for a moment. What I'd love to do is get you to chat in what emotion best describes how you have been feeling lately. So take a moment and chat in what emotion best describes how you've been feeling lately. Stressed and exhausted. Thank you. Ellen, yes, anxious. Manuel says busy, right? And we forget busy doesn't equal productive. Busy can equal exhausted, overwhelmed, wiped out, anxious. Yeah, all of these are so normal. I recently spoke for 670 employees at Dell, and I asked this question. And I took all of their responses and I made a word cloud. And the bigger the word, the more times it was entered. And this is what the results showed. And what I found more fascinating than the answers themselves was that there was a sense of relief in knowing that people were not alone in having these feelings. You know, mental health is more than just the absence of mental illness, and resilience is nothing more than a muscle that we can build and practice. But the thing about muscles is they have to be tested and pushed to their limits in order to grow. And resilience isn't built when everything is perfect and rosy. It's built in times like this. So, our resilience story, this is my son, Evan. And when Evan was 3 years old, he tried to kill me. At the age of 4, he started his first antipsychotic. Now, Evan is an amazing kid. He's now 17, and we've recently gotten even more diagnoses that we didn't know we had. But basically, you take severe autism and mental illness, add in learning disabilities and intellectual delays, throw in a slew of other neurological challenges, and you have this perfect storm. And Evan's father left when he was 18 months old. So I found myself alone and scared and isolated, and nobody understood what I was going through. And one of my clients said, "You should reach out to NAMI and take one of their classes." So I did, and it was the turning point for us. It was the first time I knew that I was not alone. So I learned a lot about resilience firsthand, that and a tumor in my salivary gland that resulted in a whole series of events: facial paralysis, eye surgery, a broken foot, 6 weeks of radiation. And really, my life has been a resilience building breeding ground. So I've talked with NAMI and spoken for NAMI before on resilience. And so I wanted to change it up a little bit and give you some practical tools that you can use immediately. So first, I want you to think of an animal, like get an animal in your head. But whatever you think about, don't think about pink elephants. Like, I don't want you to think about big, chubby, pink elephants, blue-eyed, big-eared, squishy pink elephants. That's kind of impossible. It's kind of like saying, I'm going to go on a diet, but I'm not going to think about chocolate or ice cream. It just doesn't work. And that is because our brain, if we are not careful, can be our worst enemy. So here's what I find happens quite often. We often feel like, I shouldn't feel anxious. I shouldn't feel sad. I have so much to be grateful for. Why am I struggling so much? And we beat ourselves up for feeling badly. And here's what's interesting about your brain. When you try not to feel emotions, it's like the pink elephant. You feel them stronger and you feel them for a longer duration. So they're more intense and they last longer. And that is because our brain's job is not to make us happy. Our brain's job is not to make us peaceful and content. Our brain's only job is to keep us safe. So imagine that you're walking through a field full of beautiful flowers, and the sky is blue, it's gorgeous out, and all of a sudden a puma jumps right out at you. Now, what do you think your brain remembers? The puma or the flowers? Well, of course, your brain remembers the flower or the puma, because the flowers aren't going to try to eat you. So your brain has evolved over time to pay a lot of attention to threats and minimize the good stuff. It's why if you've ever had a performance review at work and you were told you did 9 things really great, but you have one opportunity for improvement, when you're laying in bed at night, it's the opportunity for improvement that we gravitate toward. And that is because your brain has something called a negativity bias. It means that our brain's job is to constantly scan the environment for what is wrong. And right now, let's face it, there is no shortage of that. The good news is that we can retrain our brain. And as someone who has struggled, here, let me come off the share screen and I'll just talk to you. As somebody who has, I was diagnosed with clinical depression when I was 19 years old. And I know people always laugh like a depressed motivational speaker. But I can tell you that these strategies are things I actually apply. I don't always do it perfectly because this is all a practice and we're all works in progress. But one of the things that was super helpful for me to learn as someone who has struggled with depression is that your thoughts are not facts. Your emotions are not facts. Every thought, every emotion serves a purpose, right? But it doesn't mean they're true. And most of us aren't used to arguing back with our brain. We try to run from uncomfortable emotions and we end up spending way more time trapped in them. So what do you do about it? Well, the first thing we know is that self-care is priority number 1, and self-care is not selfish, right? Think of the dirtiest word you can imagine. Don't worry, you don't have to chat this in, but think of the dirtiest word you can imagine. And I guarantee you, none of you thought of self-care. Yet it's almost one of those things where we feel like I don't have time to care for me. That's selfish. And that's what I thought until I ended up with a tumor the size of an avocado in my salivary gland. The truth is, self-care doesn't have to be a spa day. Simply taking a moment to take a few deep breaths is considered self-care. You see my dog on the couch, I snuggle my dogs. It releases oxytocin, the cuddle hormone, the feel-good hormone. That's a form of self-care. Having a plant on your desk is self-care. 120 minutes of exercise a week, whether it's spread out or all done at once, is enough to change your brain for the better. And it's enough to almost rival antidepressants. Now, no judgment. I'm on everything but roller skates. But I can tell you that self-care is a requirement for mental health. And as someone who's struggled with a mood disorder, I can tell you that aside from the physical benefits of it, the mental health benefits are tremendous. The other thing I would say is stop just prioritizing your schedule and make sure you are scheduling your priorities, right? If I tracked your time for a week, would I be able to tell what was most important to you? Most of us get caught up being busy, but the problem is our resume and our eulogy shouldn't be the same document, right? Like if we don't make time for what matters most, then we end up just in this busyness loop and we create more anxiety and more stress. So at the end, I'm going to tell you how to get a copy of this self-care sheet. But this is what I do. Every month I sit down, I have a glass or 4 of wine, I go through this activity. I'm totally kidding. It's vodka. No, I'm really kidding. But I go through the activity because I want to make sure that I'm putting my time where my mouth is, where I say what is most important, that my actions and my intentions actually align, right? Next, how many of you type yes in the chat box if you have ever finished a long day of work or whatever you're doing and thought to yourself, if one more person appreciates me, I'm quitting. If I get one more compliment, I'm out of here. Type yes in the chat box if you have ever said that. Yeah, I don't think a single one of us had. Yet, gratitude has been found to be the #1 predictor of well-being and a strong determinant of resilience. And the reason for that is that it offsets Mother Nature's inclination toward the negative. So first, turn off your TV and turn off social media and turn off your phone for the first 30 minutes after you're awake. It's when you're the weakest, cognitively speaking, and your brain can't organize and interpret all of that information. I know we say I sleep with my phone next to my bed because it's an alarm. They make those. Even if you have to sleep with it for emergencies, put it on do not disturb and turn off all notifications. But one of my favorite ways to practice gratitude is something called a delicious moment. So neuroscience research tells us that the more we think and behave a certain way, the easier it is to think and behave that way. So the more you activate the anxiety pathways in your brain, the easier it is to get stuck there. And one way out is to focus on looking for the good. So I always say, you know, when I was a little girl, I read all of these fairy tales and they all ended with, and they lived happily ever after. The problem is there's no such thing as a constant state of happy. Happiness is not a trait, it's a skill. And it happens in micro moments. And I call those delicious moments. So psychologists will say if you can step outside of your experience while you're having a good moment and savor it, really internalize that good feeling, you etch it into the neural structure of your brain. You can literally change the way your brain processes the world simply by changing what you look for. I have a sign on my bathroom mirror. It's written in blue Sharpie on a piece of printer paper, and it just says, what do you want to see today? And a couple of weeks ago, I was, you know, politics and life and my son and all kinds of stuff was going on. I was exhausted, and I woke up and I said, I want to see beauty. I want to see beauty. And then I went to HEB and this was there. Now, this is a succulent that has been spray painted, but I just thought it was so beautiful. It made me smile. And that self-care, a $6 or $7 plant sitting on your desk is self-care. It's a delicious moment, and savor it. And what I encourage you to do is put on gratitude glasses. Right? We're constantly looking for threats. We're constantly looking for the negative. We're constantly waiting for the other shoe to drop. And trust me, I get this. When you have someone in your life with mental illness, you spend a lot of time infused with stress and cortisol. But simply looking for something to be grateful for, don't even have to find it. Just looking reduces cortisol, the stress hormone, by 23%. Look through gratitude glasses. Now, what we know is it's really hard to adopt new behaviors. So the research tells us that if you can tie a new habit into an existing one, it's more likely to stick. So I brush my teeth every day, twice a day. So twice a day, every day, I say one thing I am grateful for while I'm brushing my teeth. And the more specific, the better. Your brain likes novelty. So if every day it's my family is safe, right, then your brain just stops paying attention. So it could be that I didn't hit any red lights today, or I got to leave my house today, or I got to put on makeup, or whatever it is as small as it could be. I got to go on a walk for today and it was beautiful weather. The more you look for the good stuff, the more you're likely to find it. And this is the easiest gratitude practice. So we're all going to do this together right now. So in the chat box, I want you to type in what is right now. What is one thing that is right now? I have this as a sticky note on my computer monitor. What is one thing that is right now? Go ahead and chat in. Pizza in my belly. That's awesome, Sabrina. You ate dinner out. Nice. I haven't eaten yet. Your grandson is healthy. Oh, thank you, Adita. I appreciate it. Family connections, snuggling with puppies, also pizza. Nice. Right? It doesn't have to be big. And this is the interesting thing about gratitude. So everyone who took time to chat in had a surge of dopamine and serotonin, the feel-good neurohormones and antidepressants. Okay. Everybody who read the responses had the same feel-good set of neurochemicals fire. Oh, a comfortable black dress. Nice. Right? It just feels good. And here's what we know. More people die of loneliness every single year than smoking, high blood pressure, and obesity. We have been told lately to social distance, but it's really physical distance that we want with social connection. But here's the interesting thing about all of this data. Loneliness is only the subjective feeling of feeling alone. So you could be in a house of people and feel lonely, and you could be all by yourself and just feel calm in solitude. The only time loneliness is harmful for your health is when you perceive and feel lonely. Now, if you enjoy being alone and dog snuggles make you feel good, then that doesn't have the same health benefits. However, I will tell you that people who are struggling with mental illness often feel isolated and alone anyway. And you throw in a pandemic and a global crisis, and it has been incredibly hard. I think the most recent statistic I saw was 45% of people around the globe have said they've struggled with anxiety and depression since the beginning of COVID, the highest number it's ever been, right? We need each other. And one of my favorite tools is learning how to reset your nervous system. So I learned how to do this. It was almost by accident, but it's so powerful. So our nervous system is broken into two parts. One is the sympathetic nervous system, and the other is the parasympathetic. So your sympathetic nervous system is your fight or flight. It's the activation energy in your body and brain. But here's what's interesting. Your brain doesn't know the difference between excitement or stress. It doesn't know the difference between winning the lottery or having to deal with an incredibly stressful situation. It's the same part of your brain that responds, same part of your body. The only difference is the story we're telling ourselves about what we're experiencing. It's fascinating. So you can actually put your body back into the parasympathetic rest and digest nervous system by simply taking time to breathe. So basically, when we are focused on laughter, humor, our breath, meditation, mindfulness, anything, social connection, your brain knows you're safe. If you're able to focus on those other things or find things you're grateful for, your brain knows you're not being chased by a tiger. And your brain doesn't care if it's a snarky email from your boss or a saber-toothed tiger, it reacts the exact same way. So I want to teach you a breathing technique that I learned from a friend of mine, but it's used for opera singers, elite athletes, newscasters are taught to use this technique. It's called diaphragmatic breathing, and it's kind of counterintuitive to the way we typically breathe. So the truth is our brain doesn't really get enough oxygen and blood to it when we breathe normally, because as we age, we take more shallow breaths. So in order to ensure that your brain has the needed blood and oxygen to function effectively, we have to breathe from our abdomen. And so this sounds kind of funky, but we're going to practice it together. But first, let me explain how it works. So on the inhale, you're going to pooch out your belly. And I know ladies were taught not to do this, but that's okay. The beautiful thing about Zoom is you can't see it. So on the inhale, you imagine that there's a balloon in your belly filling with air. And on the inhale, you pooch out your belly as far as you can. Then you're going to hold it for a couple of seconds. And then on the exhale, when you bring it back, you're going to pretend that there's a weight on the end of your exhale, bringing you lower and having the exhale be longer, because the exhale is actually the part of the breath that puts you back into the rest and digest parasympathetic nervous system. So if you want to increase anxiety, take long inhales and short exhales. If you want to calm anxiety, you can still take long inhales as long as you're filling your belly with air, but long exhales. So we're going to do this using a technique that I was taught by the women's Canadian, this is a mouthful, the women's Olympic rowing champion in Canada. And she taught me this technique and said they do this every time before a practice or a meet. Type yes in the chat box if you have children, because this works super well for them. I do this with Evan. I even do this with my 18-year-old daughter. I do this all the time, several times throughout the day. It works for kids. It works for anybody. And what we're going to do, hold out your hand, and I can't see you, so I'm going to go ahead and assume that you're playing along with me. And we're going to take an inhale as we trace up, expanding your belly, pooch out your belly, hold it, exhale. Now, I don't know about you, but when I did that the first few times, I got dizzy, lightheaded. And that's because your brain isn't used to getting enough blood and oxygen. When you are focused on your breathing, and 3 deep breaths will reset your nervous system, and a deeply relaxed person takes 7 breaths a minute. So when you are focused on your breathing, whether it's through mindfulness, meditation, or simply breathing exercises, your brain knows you are safe, and it stops producing cortisol and adrenaline, and it starts relaxing. And anytime you are starting to feel spun up, 3 deep breaths will reset you. A 5-minute walk outside will reset you. Sitting with a plant will reset you. Cuddling with your dogs will reset you. Really, anything you can do to signal to your brain that you're safe, a warm bath, right? Your brain knows when you're laughing, it knows when you're grateful, it knows when you're breathing and focused on your breath and your emotion, that you are not in any immediate danger. And it's very powerful. The other thing I would say, and this is where NAMI has been a lifeline for me because it's selfish. You know, I just published last month my 4th book, Mind Over Moment, Harness the Power of Resilience, and the journal that was actually illustrated by a special education teacher in Terrell, Texas. And a portion of all my book proceeds go to the National Alliance on Mental Illness in Central Texas. They go to NAMI, they go to you guys, because it's selfish. It feels so good to give back. Doing something for other people is the single biggest momentary increase of happiness of any exercise ever tested. And here's what's amazing. If you do something kind for someone else, they're more likely to do something kind for someone else. And if somebody witnesses you doing something kind for someone else, they're more likely to do something kind for someone else. And the reason for that is a surge of oxytocin, the cuddle hormone that bonds mothers and children. However, what most people don't know is that oxytocin is a stress hormone. It is released when we are under stress to cause us to seek social connection and support. And anytime you are focused on giving to others, you're activating the pro-social part of your brain, meaning you're not thinking about what's wrong with me and my stuff and everything you've got going on with you. You're focused on helping other people. Again, takes your brain out of a threat response. So here is the lifeline that has kept me going. It is a quote from Marianne Rademacher that I just love. I have all these things hanging on my bathroom mirror, and this is one of them. Because people used to tell me I was brave and I was petrified. And I learned that courage doesn't always roar. You know, sometimes it's just waking up and saying, I'm going to try it again. I'm going to keep going, because that is the option, to keep going. So I want to ask you now, we've taken a few deep breaths. We've talked a little bit about gratitude. When you started, I asked you to chat in what you've been feeling lately. What are you feeling now? Take a moment and chat in what emotion you're feeling right now. What emotion do you feel now? Empowered. Nice. Thanks, Karen. Relaxed, calmer, inspired. And all you did was 20 minutes of self-care. That's it. In fact, 5 minutes of self-care each day will bring you back to those feelings. It's just something you have to put on your calendar. And when people say, I don't have time, my question is, you don't have time to fuel yourself. Like, you wouldn't drive your car without putting fuel in it. You have to fuel yourself. If your cell phone battery was dead, you'd charge it. We have to charge ourselves. So I want to give you a couple of resources, but first I want to show you, this is Evan now, and Evan comes home Saturday for Thanksgiving. He's actually at a therapeutic boarding school in Idaho. And I was telling everybody before I joined on, I'm feeling anxious, right? And that's okay. Trying not to feel it is an exercise in futility. It's like trying not to think of pink elephants. So if you would like a copy of a resilient self-assessment, the self-care sheet I showed you, that where you can set priorities in each of the areas in your life, and a copy of a poem that I wrote a couple of years ago that could not be more fitting than right now, please feel free to sign up. You can text 22454, the word strength, or you can reach out at annegradygroup.com/strong. I hope you'll check out my new book and journal. If you like it, write an Amazon review. If you don't like it, don't worry about it. And just know that I appreciate everything you guys do. NAMI, your volunteers, Adrian, who was a huge part of my early involvement with NAMI, Karen, who I just think hung the moon and is fantastic, Christina, Valerie, Leo, everybody, thank you for inviting me to be a part of this event. I appreciate it. I hope you're all staying well and healthy. Valerie, I'll turn it back over to you.
Thank you, Anne. Thank you for those great tips, and thank you for reminding me of my own resiliency. Needed to hear that tonight. As we wrap up our time together tonight, I want to thank our staff, our donors, our volunteers, and our board members for your continued support. It takes all of us to deliver these much needed services, programs, and support to our community. NAMI is here for you. If you need help seeking resources or would benefit from our education and support opportunities, please reach out. Thank you for joining us this evening. Please stay safe and healthy. Good night.